Okay. Like he said, I am fairly young, so I was walking around here and meeting everybody. But I guess it's good to be the kid in the room asking questions rather than being in their position answering them. So I think to get started, I think I got to know them outside a little bit. Sriram, you've spent a lot of time at Intel. You had a great journey there. You started Intel Capital at one point. I think Yahoo pitched you, and you've seen the journey from there to where we are now. And because we're talking about AI and Intel's been foundational to where AI started, I think it would be good to just get an overview of your journey and what you're seeing now at Celesta.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you. Thanks for asking such a broad question that I can keep talking about it. So I'll try to keep it very simple. Congratulations, and I've never been moderated by a 19-year-old, so I'm kind of very nervous now. Yeah, well, listen, I think the journey that I've had is really right from the late 90s when Intel Capital was formed. And we were early investors in all kinds of deals at that time. And much like what's happening now, there's always these waves of innovation and disruption that happens in the industry. And I had the benefit of actually being on the ring side of some of those transitions. And I see great parallels to what's going on now because everybody is obviously talking about AI in a very big way. And we are a big investor in AI as Celesta. But I think there's a fundamental difference between what happened then in the early days of the internet or in the waves of broadband and in all the things that happened in the media industry and all of that to what is happening now. And I think if I were to summarize it, the difference is during those early days, it was built on the promise of how infrastructure could be built. The web itself was getting built, the browser was getting built, broadband was getting deployed in a big way. And most of the innovation or the excitement in the market was ahead of when all of those infrastructures were there. The difference this time is that we have just an incredible amount of compute capability and infrastructure capability that exists. And the advancements in AI are happening at such an exponential scale that very quickly what you think is exciting today could get disrupted 6 months from now, and the vice versa could be true also. So I truly believe there are incredible number of companies that can be created in this period, way more than what was done before. But it's going to happen in a way that all of us are going to be wondering how to react to it, because the pace, like there's a favorite saying that people that understand compound interest collect it, and people that don't understand pay it. So in a way, I think that's what we're going through. People that understand this innovation and the disruption that can happen in every industry, will make enormous value and wealth out of it, and people that don't will get disrupted. So that's how I see it.
Gautam, I think you've been a founder. You built Snaptel, Amazon, Rippling, and now at Krutrim. I think you can, if you give an overview of your journey and specifically what led you to Krutrim. And I think the most interesting thing that we spoke about a little bit outside is how is the approach different compared to regular foundation models and what you're trying to build with an India focus?
Well, great question. And rather than talk about my journey, I want to spend a little time talking about Krutrim's journey. And for me, it was, I got a cold call from a recruiter saying, do you want to help build AI for India? And I said, wait a second, who? And they said, there's a company called Ola. And I'm saying, yeah, the cabs company. They say, yeah, talk to us. So I talked to them, and now I get a ringside seat to have a chance to build AI for India. And so Krutrim's story is, the founder is Bhavesh Agarwal. He did Ola Cabs, became bigger than Uber in terms of rides and revenue in India. Did Ola Electric, which is the biggest two-wheeler scooter manufacturer. He's doing a battery stuff at scale, a gigafactory for batteries. And then he has, as if that's not enough, he wants to do an AI company. And this AI company is the full stack. We have 3 parts of Krutrim. One is the chips. We are building AI accelerator chips, and laugh at us now, but we're trying to, we will compete with the NVIDIAs and the Intels of the world. We're building our own hyperscaler to take on AWS, GCP, and we're building our own foundational models with an Indic language twist. And the reason is simple. We talk to hundreds of startups and the medium-sized enterprises in India. They say, we can't afford to pay OpenAI. It's too expensive. And it's built on 3 layers. We want to do all the layers, and we want to do it at a price point which India and Indian businesses can afford. And as I see, it takes patience, vision, and money. And Bhavesh seems to have all 3. And I'm just excited to be part of this, on the ringside, have a ringside seat to this.
I think one other thing that you mentioned that is good to double click on is how is it very different when you design it specifically for India? And I think we spoke about the breakfast example,
Yeah.
where same queries can have different meanings.
No, yeah, I tell this story a lot, and it's not a great example for what you would ask your favorite large language model, but do it. Pull out your phone, talk to ChatGPT right now, and ask it in Hindi, what's a good healthy breakfast? I'll tell you about oatmeal and how you can take Greek yogurt. And if I'm a rural person in Kerala, Orissa, or Uttar Pradesh, none of this matters to me. What is granola and what is Greek yogurt? I have no idea. I asked the same thing of the Krutrim app. And by the way, we pre-trained our own foundational model. We put out a chat bot and got our butts kicked on social media. But, it's a badge of honor. There's not many people who can do a chat application because you have to know a million things about a million people, and you can offend 1 billion people all at once. And we got to do that. And so, you ask the Krutrim model, it tell you about vegetables and having fruits and having protein. So, and this is just a trivial example, and we're building for India and for Indic languages. We want an Indian cultural ethos to it. We want, if you take all these foundational models are trained off of Common Crawl, there's Hindi spoken by 16% of people on the planet, and there's about 0.5% of Hindi data in Common Crawl. So our challenge is also to harvest Indian language data, which is not digital. It exists, but it's not digital. Train our models with that, better data mixing, better tokenizers, and the end result is foundational models which are relevant to the Indian culture, to Indian businesses, and to the Indian population.
Sriram, I think you're on the board of ISM. They're doing a lot of work for semiconductors, and Krutrim is trying to build their own chips. I think it would be good to talk a little bit about where you see opportunities in semiconductors or India-specific opportunities. Celesta is obviously big in hardware, but how do you lay the land for opportunities in chips?
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, India has a cabinet level sort of initiative called the India Semiconductor Mission, which is part of the Modi's effort to sort of build the capability for semiconductor fabs and fabless companies and all of that. And there is a design-linked scheme initiative for supporting companies and production-linked schemes for manufacturing and stuff, which, by the way, is a fantastic initiative because there's a significant level of government-level commitment to building that infrastructure. So we're actively involved in it. As you said, I'm on the board of it along with my colleague who's from Stanford, Professor Paul Raj, who is the chairman of that thing. I think what's really going on in the world is everybody is starting to see a need for domestic capabilities for the next set of technologies that are coming up. And this is in large part because of COVID, because everybody understood that the supply chain resilience is a huge challenge. You cannot be dependent on one geography for manufacturing of all the chips. So as a consequence, every country is trying to do that. And you could argue that even the Middle East is trying to do that. In fact, as you know, Global Foundries is owned by, in large part by Mubadala. So I think in that context, India doing that is a very good thing. The difference, though, is that India is coming into this space after 20 years or 25 years of TSMC. So to be thinking that you can do it in the leading edge would be a misplaced priority. The Minister Ashwini Vaishnav and the people in the cabinet are really looking at doing N-2, N-3 kind of technologies, which is probably the right things to do. But perhaps even more important than that is to have a vibrant ecosystem that actually supports companies like Krutrim and other semiconductor-related companies as a fabless opportunity, because that ecosystem is what is going to drive the demand for capacity in some of those fabs. And more importantly, I think it helps the talent to mature in, VLSI design and, EDA tools and all sorts of things. And don't forget, India had that in the late 80s when TI was there and Motorola was there. And so we have an incredible opportunity. I think it requires a significant level of discipline to not just be chasing the next shiny object. I mean, to think that India can actually put in a leading edge fab would be completely sort of, bonkers. TSMC cannot do it in Arizona because they don't have enough talent. Now, how are you going to do it in India? So I think that needs to get moderated a little bit. But other than that, the overall commitment the Indian government is showing is pretty significant, and I think it's about time. So,
Gautam, on the talent piece, then we can then open it up to questions. You are building a team in India, and besides, I mean, you're spread out, but you still have a concentrated team in India. Are you seeing there is enough AI talent in India? Are you doing something to cultivate talent in India?
There's huge talent in India for sure. I mean, the number of bright young men and women who want to be in the field and work for us and others is amazing. But I was listening to I went to a forum in Bangalore where Rajiv Chandrasekhar, the minister, was there. And he said, we have no shortage of infrastructure. We can buy as many GPUs as you want. We can just buy them any day of the week. What we have is we need a workforce which is now trained for the new AI era. All our young men and women, all our universities were set up to produce Java and C++ programmers. This is a whole different world. So yes, we have a lot, but we completely need to rejigger the way our universities in India are going to produce talent, and that's ongoing work. Yeah, I don't know, we need to produce masters and PhDs in machine learning at a scale which is unprecedented. And I think we're getting ready for that. So we have great talent, but we need to do a lot more.
if I can just add to that, I think, and since the whole rubric of this conversation is AI for good, a very good common friend of many of us here, Dr. Sridhar Mitta, who is one of the early persons in Wipro as the first CTO of Wipro. He has a company called Next Wealth in India, which I'm sure some of you may have heard of it. It's really trying to bring the second, third tier city, talent and entrepreneurs to really get into the AI, machine learning sort of area. And he's actually providing an infrastructure to training them, and as you mentioned, creating the next level of talent and expertise requires dedicated commitment. I mean, don't forget the BPOs of TCS and others came about after 10 years of training when people join. So we're going to have to do that, and there are some interesting companies and people that are doing that. In fact, including Manu Sharma, who's here. Manu is doing something interesting in Karya. So there are lots of these sorts of activities that are needed, and more of it.
We can open up to questions if there are any questions, or I think there's one there. Yeah.
For example, the differentiation among there's a lot of regional foundation model providers have come up, assuming their scaling law works, and there's no differentiation with respect to training data. So how do you see, like, in 12 months down the line, there's going to be a differentiation with OpenAI's model, or let's say Mistral, or India's regional foundation models?
Yeah, so scaling laws are kind of outdated. 20x is, who cares? People are putting out $30 trillion token data sets out there, but they're all in 5 languages. We have nothing in Indic languages, and we are going to go after non-digital data, digitize it, and maybe make those books and manuscripts available for the public to read, but we'll harvest the token, and these are out of copyright, so it's not as if we're violating anybody's copyright. And yes, OpenAI can do anything. They have $10-20 billion, but it's not a focus for them. They don't care if someone can translate from Oriya to Malayalam or any other thing. So it's a matter of focus, and that's why I think we will succeed in what we do.
I think there's one there, and then we can wrap up.
Gautam, Sriram, thank you for that. Quick question for you. In the current world where, generative AI has kind of created a lot more buzz in the field of AI, when you look at use cases in a business sense, what are some of the markers you kind of say, the top 3 markers, which tell you that, hey, this is actually a generative AI use case, right? Or you don't need to use generative AI here. You could actually do with the machine learning or predictive AI. So what is the kind of 2 or 3 markers you use to say it needs to check these boxes before it's a generative AI use case?
That's a tough question. Because I think, we all get caught up in this buzzwords of generative AI, and a lot of us were involved in predictive analytics in the early days, and you could argue some degree of predictive analytics uses AI techniques because you're literally sort of predicting certain outcomes based on a variety of signals that you're getting. In the generative AI case, the LLMs that have been pushed by Google and Meta and others are very broad. So if you actually parse that and say, what is the implication of using a generative AI sort of a model in a key industry? Let's say take legal, for instance, or or advisory services that audit firms provide. These are very narrow use cases, but the point is that generative AI can actually be far more significant in terms of its ability to be monetized on day one versus these large broad-based generative AI models. These broad-based AI models are far harder to sort of compete against and monetize unless you are one of the large guys. I don't know if you saw, Zuckerberg's comment yesterday. It's going to be a long time before they monetize that. So I don't see how a startup that says I'm in generative AI can really have some degree of credibility if they are not well-defined and more focused. So trying to build a broad-based thing doesn't apply. I know it doesn't directly answer your question because there's no checklist that you can go look at and say, does it fit these things? But as an investor, when we look at companies, we're always looking for how do you do less, not how do you do more. Somebody once said, would you rather have a small percentage of a large market or a large percentage of a small market? I would rather go, large percentage of a small market. And the reason is I can establish my competitive advantage. I can be the big guy. And for me to actually expand to adjacent markets is much easier if I have proven in one market segment. If I'm trying to build a large-scale LLM, how do I compete with people that are, infinitely more capitalized than what an average VC could do? So we try to make that distinction. So I don't know if that helps, but sort of the.
Yeah, sure. Quickly to add to that, it's not so much generative AI. It's one application, and it was the first one. And these models have emergent properties. What's important is these transformer-based models, the way they're being used in computer vision and speech. They're using transformer-based vision models to look at crops and what's happening at the square meter level from satellite images. They're not generating images, but they're understanding images. So generative AI is the first big application from these transformer models, but the understanding that these models have and how they can use the emergent properties to project onto other areas, I think that's a winning thing. So to me, Gen AI is just selling the technology short. There's a lot more to it.
Yep. I think we've run out of time. Thank you, Sriram, Gautam.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.